moments ago, Donald Trump just tried to fire Lisa Cook, who is the first black woman to serve on the Federal Reserve Board, quote, effective immediately. In the face of baseless allegations made by the Trump administration, Cook said last week that she had no intention of being bullied and pledged to gather accurate information to answer any legitimate questions and provide the facts. Let's be very clear. Since Donald Trump came back into office, he has tried any way he can to chip away at the Federal Reserve's independence. And this has truly been in an attempt to get to the rock bottom interest rates that he really desires to have, apparently by any means necessary. Joining us now to discuss this breaking news is Norm Eisen, the founder and chair of the Democracy Defenders Fund, and Ali Velshi, who is the host of Velshi on MSNBC. Can I just give a little bio of Lisa Cook for people that don't know? Yeah. Lisa Cook, she was elected to the board of the Federal Reserve of the Bank of Chicago in January of 2022. She was nominated by President Biden and confirmed by a narrow Senate vote in May 2022 to become the first black woman on the Fed Board of Governors. Her term officially began in 2022 in May, and she was confirmed for a full 14-year term that extends to 2038. She has held roles at the Treasury as part of the Council on Foreign Relations. She was a National Research Fellow at Hoover Stanford Institute. She's advised the governments of Nigeria and Rwanda on finance and development. She is qualified for the role, which is why she was confirmed.
So let's set the table with that background of the member of the board who has a 13-year term, if you consider this year almost done. That's what Trump ultimately wants, because whoever he gets to replace her with will serve out the rest of her term and have that whole time. But the Supreme Court in Trump versus Wilcox earlier this year made it very clear that the Federal Reserve is a quasi-private entity that is not subject to the whims and wiles, effectively saying, of the President of the United States. They are an independent body. So help us understand why the President thinks that he can just summarily fire a Fed board member in the face of the fact that this body relates its history back to the early days of the founding of this country, in which very bright lines, Alexander Hamilton, Mr. President, you may recall him. We were talking about Hamilton earlier today. Very bright lines were drawn with respect to the banking relationship between the Reserve and the Fed and the government.
That's right. The Fed is analogized to the first bank of the United States in the first Congress. So it informs our understanding of the Constitution. The second bank of the United States, which was based on the first bank. This isn't like the other cases which are pending final disposition at Democracy Defenders Fund. We're litigating some of them about the extent of the president's firing power, and the Supreme Court said so in the Gwen Wilcox case, that the Fed is different. But Donald Trump doesn't care about the Constitution. He doesn't care that Congress has said you can only fire somebody for cause. He doesn't care that he has no cause here. This is based on a tweet by one of his most sharp partisans, Bill Pulte, who's in charge of the federal agency dealing with mortgages. This is irrelevant to him. You have somebody in the White House who himself, convicted felon, 34 counts. No wonder the federal courts have shot him down 200 times for illegal actions. This is another one. And you know what? Remember, can I have that letter?
Sure.
This is Donald Trump's letter. Do you know what Lisa Cook should do? What Nancy Pelosi did. She should tear that letter. Now you'll need to tape it for the rest of the segment. That letter is worthless.
Ali, I want to bring you in here, my friend, because in the very first sentence that the president has in this letter, pursuant to my authority under Article 2 of the Constitution of the United States and the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 was passed to take away the right of the president to unilaterally fire any of these governors. So help me understand why the administration thinks they should lean on that act when it's very clear that after that, they could only fire these folks for cause.
Yeah, so there are three things to think about here. Number one is big picture central banks, whether it is Canada or Japan or Switzerland or the European Union and the United States. They're modeled on our system, and that is that they are fundamentally independent from interference from the president of the United States. We have had experiences in previous decades where presidents always want high growth and low interest rates. Donald Trump has taken this from an argument with Jay Powell about whether interest rates should be lower into a fishing expedition to get rid of Jay Powell, suggesting that his renovation of the Federal Reserve is somehow out of place. Remember, they took that field trip and went down to the Fed themselves, to now finding a weak spot here. Miles Taylor made the point the other day that in the end, they're going to get us all on mortgage applications and traffic tickets. This business about residency, they're going after Adam Schiff the same way. They're going after Letitia James the same way. Let's say it's true. Let's say people made mistakes on their mortgage applications. Making mistakes on your mortgage applications, moving that into fraud is, A, an interesting thing and worth looking at. Number two, that would generally not be handled by anybody at the level of the Attorney General or Ed Martin, or certainly not the President of the United States. This would be the Fed's HR office that would look at this. There might be a federal investigation in which agents don't talk about it. They don't post it on social media. They would look into whether this is the case. And the question is, would there be a reprimand? Was anybody done out of any money? Is there any state owed any money? The idea that this has escalated to the fact that the President of the United States has written a letter to this Federal Reserve governor, firing her on the basis, by the way, and Norm will clear this up, on the basis of allegations. There has been no due process here whatsoever. I'm not sure the Fed's Human Resources Department has gone through this yet, let alone anybody in the law. So this is of a piece of Donald Trump moving in, taking control of everything he can, finding targets where the defender is hard, right? It's like going to D.C., moving your troops in because there's no governor to push back on you. It's that sort of thing. It's the equivalent of that. If you're going to take out Lisa Cook, 99.9% of Americans didn't know who Lisa Cook was last week. And the Federal Reserve chair is under fire from the president himself. So this just continues to be Donald Trump's increasing grab on power, this move into competitive authoritarianism that we're in. If there was a real problem with Lisa Cook and Lisa Cook needed to be removed from the Fed, there needed to be a process taken that would make every American believe that, wow, that woman needed to be removed from the Fed. All we have now is a tweet and a letter.
I do think, to Allie's point, and then a point that, Norm, you raised, it is important to underscore here, because a lot of Americans prior to today probably did not know who Lisa Cook was. Her nomination was a highly contested nomination along party lines by the Republicans. The Republicans tried to paint her as unqualified and a left-wing extremist, to the point where she was confirmed by I think it was 50-51, and Vice President Harris had to come in to cast the tie-breaking vote for her nomination. I read through her bio at the top of this. She's extremely qualified. But the point here is, based on an allegation that the administration themselves don't even know to be true. Where's that part in the line here?
We have there's sufficient reason to believe you may have made the false statements.
Sufficient reason to believe you may have.
You hear that? You may have.
And as a legal
14-year term, sufficient reason to believe you may have. You'd think someone would call someone's lawyer and someone would have this conversation with them.
Correct. Right. Or you think it would have came up in her highly contested confirmation hearing, Norm. So I just think it is it is not lost on me that the person other than the chair that he has decided to target is the only black woman to be serving on the board.
And the legal flaw here is that statute where Congress has said you can only fire based on cause. What's the legal definition of cause? It's not a tweet.
It's not a tweet
by a Trump partisan. Can you imagine if a tweet could be the basis for breaking the law? All you need to do is ask, you want to get rid of somebody, tweet. Cause has to be proof that the law has been broken or gross misconduct on the job. What do these baseless allegations even have to do with her job? So what you see is, as Allie notes, another red line that has been breached and broken in this push towards authoritarianism, but it's one that hits Americans in the pocketbook. Because when you weaken the Fed, what's the reason that they had that first Bank of the United States, the second Bank of the United States, that Supreme Court opinion, this statute? Because when you weaken the independence of the Fed, you weaken the American economy. That makes everything more expensive, more uncertain for Americans.
Weakens the dollar.
It weakens the dollar, and it harms us all.